Okay, can everyone see my screen? I shall take it as a yes. So today I will be talking about the art of reconnaissance. So before I start, we need to do a disclaimer first because I'm going to be teaching some things that may be dangerous to others if you misuse it. So yeah, we must do a disclaimer. So all content mentioned is purely for educational purpose. Neither BBCS nor the speaker, me, will be held responsible for any damage of infrastructure, property, or disruption of services. And this workshop is also not affiliated with any of the developers behind any tools, software, or websites mentioned during the workshop. And finally, the most important point, do not conduct active scans or attack any property without prior consent from the owner. So if that's clear, we can start moving on. Here's a quick who am I. I'm a JC2 student at NJC, and I take H2 computing as my A-level subject. And in my free time, I like to do some low-level security research. For example, operating system exploitation, browser exploitation, and those things. I find them really interesting. So if you happen to have the same interest, you can come and talk to me, we can discuss. So what exactly is reconnaissance? So I think some of you guys might have went to Google what is reconnaissance, because why would you attend a workshop that you know nothing about, right? So Google will tell you that reconnaissance is the act of gaining more information of the target. And that's exactly what reconnaissance is in the cyberspace. So given a target, you want to gain as much information as possible about that person. And sometimes the information are those that that person doesn't want you to know. And the next question will be, why should we do reconnaissance? So for pen testers, penetration testers, or ethical hackers, we do reconnaissance mainly to increase our attack surface. So as quoting from the Art of War, if you know your enemy and you know yourself well, then there's a very high chance of winning the battle. So it's the same thing in the cyberspace. We want to do reconnaissance to increase our attack surface. The second point is to spot low-hanging fruits. So what do I mean by low-hanging fruits? So for example, if you want to hack a website and you somehow find the owner's password in a backup directory in the website, and you can take it and log in as the owner, then that's an easy win for you. So that's what I mean by low-hanging fruits. And we can find that through reconnaissance. And lastly, if you don't want to be a penetration tester or a hacker, you can do this to satisfy your curiosity. So for example, if you want to know what technologies are used behind the website or who built the website, you can find that out through reconnaissance. So there are basically two types of reconnaissance. There's passive reconnaissance and also active reconnaissance. So I will start with passive first. Passive reconnaissance is collecting as much information as possible without leaving any traces. So the goal of this is to try to blend in as a regular user and not any malicious user. But you want to collect as much information as possible, and that's usually legal. So some of the methods that we use, the methodologies are as listed here. So if you guys are unfamiliar with any of these terms and you find it really like I'm speaking buzzwords, then don't worry, because I will go in depth about each of them later when the time comes. So these are some of the methods we use for passive reconnaissance. And before I move on, let's set up the virtual machine first so that you guys can follow along. So please open up your VMware. The shortcut, you probably have it saved on your desktop or something. So just double click to open it up. Then you guys probably don't have anything to the left side. It's probably empty if like you are installing it for the first time. But just click on the open a virtual machine, not create, open. So you click on it, then inside the VM image that you have downloaded, if you have unzipped it, it should look like this. So you can just click inside. and there will only be one pop-up. And you just double click on this. And it should load the BBCS VM for you.
Are you screen sharing on your VMware or something? Because I see the slides only.
Oh, oops. Can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So again, just double click on the VMware shortcut. Wait for it to open up. Then you click open a new virtual machine, not create, open. Then go to the folder where you downloaded the materials. And after you unzip, it should only contain one file that is displayed here. Then you can just double click on that and it should bring up the VM. So I will give you guys like maybe 5 seconds to follow along. If you guys face any issues along the way, then you can just type in the chat. Okay, so after you are done with this, you can just click play virtual machine. So for those of you who are using VMware for the first time, there might be a pop-up screen asking you if you want to install VMware tools. So you can just click install it. It's to help you use your VM better. Okay, so after your VM is loaded, you can just click the full screen button on top and you can type in the password. I've included a password in the readme.txt. So the username is just root, R-O-O-T, and the password is root flipped around, T-O-O-R. Then you can just press login. Okay, so after, I see a chat. Yes, thanks Melody. Okay, so after you're logged in, you should be seeing this screen, the same screen as I am. So just leave it here first. We will go back to the slides. Okay, so our first methodology will be to always do CMS fingerprinting. So what is CMS? CMS is basically content management system. It's basically a jargon that represents some hosting service. So maybe some of you guys have hosted your own blogs before with like Blogspot or Blogger. So that's an example of a CMS. And by doing this, we are interested in identifying what CMS the website is using and the version that it's using. So some of you guys might be thinking now, why should we know this? So hold that thought. We will tackle this when it comes. So the tools we'll be using is Webalizer and WhatWeb. All of these are already installed in the virtual machine. So let's go over there. If you are already in your virtual machine, you can click the top left corner, this applications icon here. Click on it, and then go to web browser. It should bring up a Firefox web browser that's installed by default. So just to demonstrate this, we can go to like, let's say tesla.com. If you already have your VM installed and don't have the VM that I gave, you can just I included a tools.txt there, so you can just install it from there. Or you can just like follow along because most of the tools are, git clone. Most of the tools are also already installed in Kali. Okay. So as you can see, we are on the Tesla website now. So just need to click the top right-hand corner, this little box called Webalizer. And it should drop down a menu that tells you all the technology that the website is using. So for example, we see the CMS here is Drupal. And it also very nicely tells you that it's running Drupal version 8. So that's also very useful. Webalizer is a browser extension. So you can install it to Google Chrome or Firefox or like Safari. It supports a lot of major browsers and it's very useful. It tells you a lot of other information also, which we might go through later if we have time. So that's one way you can find the CMS of the target. And another way is to use a command line tool called What Web. So you can just click this little black color box on the top left-hand corner. It's called the terminal emulator. So it allows you to use the command prompt, or that's what they call it in Windows. So if you click it, yours should be smaller in size. I shall just reduce my size. And you should get this command prompt, which you can type commands into. So you can just be like, what web, and you copy this URL down, right click copy, and you paste clipboard. And you see it returns a lot of data. So it might be hard to see for some of you, but if you look at it carefully, it says meta generator Drupal 8. So this tool was also able to identify the CMS that the website is using, Drupal. And why is this version information useful? Because, for example, if we want to attack Tesla.com, which we are not going to attack obviously, then we realize that it's using Drupal. So instead of attacking Tesla.com directly, we can attack Drupal and use Drupal to gain access to Tesla. So that's something we can use is to search in ExploitDB to find any known exploits. So ExploitDB is basically an exploit database that contains all the publicly known exploits against like most softwares and like websites. So to check this, we can just go and type search exploit. It's built into Kali. So search exploit and the name of the technology you want to search. So Drupal. Click enter, and it should tell you a lot of information. Like these are all the publicly known exploits about Drupal. So you can just go through this and see whether there's a Drupal 8 exploit. For example, this one might be possible against Tesla. And if you are on a real assessment, you want to try all of them against the target, given that you have obtained prior permissions. Okay, so that's for CMS identification and why is that useful. So now we can go back to our slides. There's also another website here called FOFA, but I won't be demonstrating it because the website is completely in Chinese, I think, and there's no way to translate it. So if you're interested, you can go and take a look. Then the second next important part is server identification. So given a host name like tesla.com, how would you know the real IP address behind the host name? How would you know what operating system the server is running on? We can get both of this information through ping and NSLOOKUP, the most basic tools that are built into like both Windows and also Linux. And we are also more interested in the web server, the framework, and the backend language. So all of these are preparation for active reconnaissance, which is our next step. If that's fine, we can go back to our machine, VMware, and we can just go ahead and ping tesla.com. So you see that, oh, I just clicked Control-C, by the way. Control-C means keyboard interrupt. So if you click Control and C together, it will shut down any software that is running now, which is the ping command that I've just ran. So the command returned me some information. First information is the IP address of tesla.com. So with this information, we can go ahead and do other more malicious things, like for example, scan tesla.com by scanning this IP address. And another useful information is this TTL, time to live. Time to live is basically the time that, basically the number of hops that your network package can go to. So that's not in scope of the course today, obviously, but it's just good information to know that normally if you are on a Linux machine, for example, if I ping myself, my time to live is 64. So if the TTL is 0 to 64, then it will be a Linux server. If the TTL is between 64 to 128, then it's likely to be Windows. And if the TTL is above 128, it could be a networking device like a router or a switch. So there's just some useful information that you can use to identify what operating system the target is using. You can also get this information through NSLOOKUP. So just type in NSLOOKUP followed by the domain name. All of these usage are included in the usage.txt. So if I'm a bit too fast, then you can just go ahead and look at that. So it will tell you also that Tesla's IP address is 199.66.11.62. But this doesn't tell you the TTL. So I prefer using ping. And if you want to find the technology that the website is using, you can use a website called buildwith.com. So you can just go ahead to the web browser and type BUILT buildwith.com. And yeah, as the title says, is to help you find out what websites are built with. So if you are curious, you can just go ahead and copy tesla.com inside and do a lookup. It gives you a lot of useful information. For example, what kind of tracking software it's using, and what kind of widgets it has, the language that it supports. And if you scroll down some more, there should be frameworks. So you can see it's running PHP version 7, and it's also running Adobe Enterprise Cloud. So these are all useful informations that you want to collect. So you can, like, for example, find exploits that target Adobe Cloud, exploits that target PHP, and things like that. And you can just look through. There's a long list of information that they gave. So I'm not going to be looking through all of this now, but you can do that in your free time. So let's go back to the slides. The next step will be Google docking. So what is Google docking? It's basically collecting sensitive information using the power of search engines. So do you guys know how search engines like Google work? They work by indexing a whole database of pages on the internet. So if you type something in, then it will query their own database and pull out their response and give it to you. So these are a list of query statements that you can go ahead and check out. But I will just be demonstrating some of them in my virtual machine. So let's first go to google.com because Google is the most powerful search engine and we want to utilize it. So once you are inside, for example, if you want to search for information about tesla.com, you can say like site:*star.tesla.com. So star basically means everything. So I want every site that has an extension tesla.com. So you can see www.shop.tesla.com, and it's mostly all this. But this information isn't really useful. So we can make it more targeted. For example, if you want to find a login page in Tesla, you can be like in text. So in the text of the website, you want the words sign in. Then now you can see things like appplayer.tesla.com, myapps.tesla.com, forums.tesla.com, shop.tesla.com, all of these, and also SSO. So These are all sort of child websites or subdomains of the Tesla main domain. What are subdomains? We will explain that later, but you just need to know that it's something that's on the Tesla infrastructure and normally you can attack it. And you see all these forums out there. If you don't want the search result to return anything on the forums, you can go ahead and minus forums, minus www, because you don't want anything on the main site also. You can click enter again and you see engage.tesla.com, SSO, shop. You can go ahead further and minus off the engage also, minus shop. Yeah, and you see toolbox, energy support. So after every time that you have finished identifying a website, you can minus it off from the Google search bar so you don't get distracted by it anymore. And you can focus on other websites. So as you can see, for example, toolbox.tesla.com, this looks like a login page. It's quite slow, but okay, let's not go there. But yeah, you see, it's probably a login page that isn't as well secured as the Tesla main site because they only have that much power. And normally you want to secure the main site better than other sites. Let me check the chat if there's any questions. It seems like there isn't. So that's Google docking. You can find a huge list of other verbs in the link that I've provided, which is this link. But here are these are some of the more useful ones that I use. So we have just talked about subdomains, but what exactly are subdomains? Subdomains are like child sites of the same website. So for example, if there's a website aaa.org, that's the parent website, then the child website or the subdomain will be login.aaa.org or anything that like has aaa.org behind. So we want to find them because they are often less maintained or contain other interesting functionalities like, for example, login bar or like maybe a feedback function that you can use to attack. So these are some tools we can use. Sublister and AMAS will be, how they work is basically they also query search engines to return information. And this website, what it does is it indexes the certificates of these subdomains. So once you search for it, it can quickly pull it out and return to you. So let's see how Sublister works in action. So Sublister is also a command line tool that's already installed. So you can just click the terminal back up and we will change directory to the directory that I installed it in, which is /opt/sublister. In order to change directory in Linux, you use the cd command. It works the same way in Windows also. So you type enter and now you can see the directory. If you want to see what's inside, you can type ls, which is list. So you can see we have this sublister.py, this Python script inside the sublister folder. So that's the script that we are interested in using. So to use this, we can type Python 3 sublister.py -d for the domain. So what's the domain that we are interested in now? We can use tesla.com again. And -v for verbose. So if we add -v, it will show up the subdomains as it finds them. But if we don't add -v, it will wait for all the search to finish, which will take a very long time. So just click enter. And you can quickly see, pull up a lot of information. So you can see what it does, it's searching in Baidu, in Yahoo, in Google, in Bing, and like VirusTotal, and all of these websites. And it's searching for subdomains of tesla.com. And you can just see there are so many subdomains of tesla.com. It's like way more than what we found in Google just now, because these are all other websites or browsers that, search engines that indexes these things. So you can just look through it. Normally what we will do now is we will write an automatic script to go and test out all of these websites to see if they are still active or not. Then we will filter out all the inactive websites. But that's out of scope for the workshop. So you can just see it found a total of 314 unique subdomains of tesla.com. You can see things like cryptopay.tesla.com. This will be an interesting website to check it out if we are on a real assessment with Tesla. So these are all the subdomains of tesla.com. The tool AMAS works the same way. Type AMAS enum for enumeration, also -d for the domain, and -v for verbose. But this tool takes a very long time to run. I don't know why. So I prefer using Sublister, and I'm not going to run it now. You can just run it on your own and see the result it produces and compare against Sublister. But it should generally be the same. Then the website will be crt.sh. For those of you who don't have the VM installed, you can go to this website and also do the same thing. Never mind, seems like the website is shut down. So maybe it will come back up sometimes in the future and you can explore that out. But it seems like it's down today. So that's all for subdomain enumeration, at least for passive recon. In active recon, there's another way to find subdomains by brute force. The next step will be data collection. So what do I mean by data collection? Normally websites, they will have like emails, names, pictures, or like phone numbers on the website. All of these are juicy information because with this information, you can go ahead and search like public dumps of breach databases for passwords. If you find an email, you can go and search against these websites that I've included to see if they have a password leak. And you must be creative because, for example, if you find someone's picture of a badge on their website, other people might find that useless. But for you, a hacker, you might be able to print that out and maybe gain access by impersonating that person by using his badge or her badge. So these are all juicy information, and we will be using the harvester to help us. But mostly we will be using our own eyes to like scan those websites, to scout those websites for the information. So let's take a look at how the harvester works. As usual, it's a command line tool. So you can just go ahead and type the harvester -d for the domain, again, tesla.com, -b for the source. So which source do you want to query? So there's like, you can query like Baidu, Bing, or Google, but I normally like to do Google. So Google. And -l for limit. How many searches do you want to query before you end your search? The default will be 500, but we can just do like 300 here and type enter to run. So it's harvesting all the emails and usernames that's associated with this site, tesla.com, and also its subdomains. So you see, it didn't find any IP address, but it found 5 emails. Contato and NI Carter, vulnerability report at tesla.com. And he also found 4 subdomains. So apart from maybe finding out the passwords of these emails, what we can do is to check out how these emails are formatted. For example, NI Carter, his name might be Nick Carter. And how Tesla works is they take the first two letters of their first name and their entire last name. So it becomes NI Carter. So with this knowledge, you can try this format of username for any Tesla employees that you find or you know, and try to brute force their account for credentials. So that's one way that we can gain information from this. And another way will be to search for their passwords. So one site that I always use is the hashed. You can type in thehashed.com in your web browser and click enter. So it's basically a very easy to use website that tells you the password of any leaked passwords of that email address. You can see, can search for username, email, phone number, name, address, and all of these things. So yep, I won't be demonstrating it, but if you are interested, you can maybe search for your own email and see if it's breached, and you might need to change your password. That's a way of protecting yourself also. So that's basically it for passive enumeration or passive reconnaissance. So if you guys have any questions, you can type them in the chat now and I will answer them. I will give you guys maybe 20 seconds. How do I get the root? Oh, my teacher, Mr. Beer, said that crt.sh is accessible now, so you guys can try that out. You just need to log in as root, then you have it. If you are using the machine that I've provided. If not, then you can maybe do like switch user, su. But if you're not root, then you need sudo su dash, then enter the password for your email. I mean, not email, enter the password of your account, then you will become root. How do I do package management? Oh, oops, sorry. So someone asked, how do I do package management in Kali Linux? So what I do is, you do apt install, and after this, you install the package that you want to find out. So the latest package installed is not really, I don't really need to use that because sometimes the latest package installed might have some dependencies that doesn't work on my own one. So normally I just want to search for the tools I want to use and just follow the installation guide. So someone asked, how do I get to this? Basically, after you, wait, are you already inside the virtual machine? If you are, then you can click this icon on the top left corner, the black little box, terminal. Then if you click that, then you will be given a terminal. If you don't have the virtual machine, then I don't think you can get to this step if you don't have a Kali Linux virtual machine. So you can try to install that later and maybe follow the slides and try to recreate these steps. The download link is in the slides. That should be sent to you guys by email. Yes, thanks, Junhong. So if that's all, we can start. We can start venturing into the dark side. I call it the dark side because active reconnaissance is basically illegal. If you do it against any host that you don't have rights to do, then you might get arrested. So try not to do it. Try not to do that. But for today, we have a special host that we set up, especially for you guys to practice. So you can follow along with what I'm doing. So this theme is too boring since we are going to do something illegal. So let's use this instead. So what is active reconnaissance? It's collecting information through scanning, fuzzing, or probing. And it will usually leave suspicious traces on the logs of the web server. And that's usually illegal because what we are doing is not what regular users are allowed to do. Basically sending a lot of requests at once to try to find out some other information. So the common methodologies is basically what I like to do is subdomain brute forcing, directory fuzzing, and port scanning. So same thing as just now. If you don't know any of this, don't worry, we will explain them later. And you can follow along. It's rare that you get an opportunity to follow along active reconnaissance because most websites don't allow them. I mean, all websites don't allow them. So what is subdomain brute forcing? It's the same idea as just now. We are trying to find child websites on the same server. But what we are doing now is actively brute forcing for these websites. So we will use a word list, which is also already installed in the virtual machine if you have it. and some of these tools. So let's go back to the virtual machine and I will explain how these tools work. So now we can't use tesla.com anymore because we don't have rights for that. So we can use this website, shangen.org. Let me just type it into the web browser. Can someone help me type in the chat? Thanks, Shangen. Maybe it's HTTP. Ah, yes, HTTP, I mean. So don't mind the contents of the contents on the page. It's quite random. So you can test whatever I'm doing on this website, but not on any other websites to not get into trouble. So we can use a tool called FAF. FAF actually stands for fast, faster, full, because all the other web fuzzing tools are generally slower. So the owner of this tool decided to create this to mock them. And it's very useful. So the arguments is -u for the URL. So we can do like shangen.org HTTP -w for the word list. I installed the word list in /opt//user /share /word list /sec list /directory discovery. By the way, if you want to autocomplete, you can type something like, for example, web. Then you can type tab on your keyboard and it will autocomplete for you. Let's use the raft. So now what we have found just now comes into play. For example, we can do a ping against shangen.org. And we see the TTL is 128, so it's probably Windows. And a cool tip about Windows is that Windows is case insensitive. So if you do /index /index with jumbled up characters, they will all appear to be the same page because Windows is case insensitive. So we can just use raft small words.txt. And if you just run it now like that, the tool is going to fail because you never specify any parameters for it to fuzz. So we need to write fuzz.shangen.org. So what this tool will do now is it will take every single word from this word list and it will replace the fuzz character with the words. And it will try to brute force for subdomains that ends with shangen.org. So you can just run it now and see it immediately found admin. So if I were you, I will go to the web browser now and go to admin.shangen.org. And it's the same page, but that's because it's our demo website. In the real page, it might be an administrative portal. So that's a good finding. You can see it found something like file transfer protocol, ftp.shangen.org also. And if you let it run for a while, you can find a lot of other more interesting directories. But I'm just going to cancel it now with Control and C, because if everyone is fuzzing at the same time, then it might be denial of service to the website. And there's also other tools like wfuzz and GoBuster that you can use. I don't think I installed them on this machine because I prefer FAF. But yeah, you guys can go ahead and check these tools out. They are also used by many security professionals in the real world. So that's how we find subdomains by brute forcing. You see, we found some of them in a very short time. Then apart from subdomains, there are also other things that we are interested in. For example, directories. Like if you see a /login or like /config, there might be a configuration file somewhere lying on the website that maybe has a password inside. That's what I've said at the start of the workshop. So this is basically brute forcing for sensitive files on the web server. And this is super easy win, as I've said before. If you find a password, that's it. Basically, you won it. You won the website. So it's the same tools, it's the same word list, and it's the same methodology also. So you guys probably know how to do it already. faf-u http shang'en.org. But now, since we are trying to fast what's behind it, so the directories, we will do a /fast and -w for the same word list, user share word list, set list, discovery, web content, raft, small words dot text, and you can specify an extension of /. So you replace every word, for example, shang'en.org/test. This is one occurrence in the word list. Then it will add an extension / onto it. So now this will be another URL that you will try to find. Because some web servers, if you just specify this for a directory, it wouldn't pass. But there might be something like test/secret.txt, and you can find that if you add an extension. If the web server is like tesla.com, as we saw just now, that's running PHP, I will also do a .php extension. So you can play around with this and you can read the documentation of this tool. It's quite a useful tool. So if you run it, you see admin again and hello.git. This is the one that is of interest the most to us, because if you look at it, shang'en.org/.git, you can see it's a GitHub repository. And with this combined with some tools, you can get really useful information like the previous commit histories of GitHub, which might sometimes contain passwords also, or secret keys if the developers are very careless. So that's one thing that we will find for. You see, it found hello, it found admin. You can go and look at those pages, but I won't be showing it now. And it finished very fast, finished in 36 seconds. This is by far the fastest fuzzer I know in the open source market. So if you find anything that's faster than 4,000 requests per second, you can come and find me, and I will try to switch to yours. That's the way that we can find secret files through directory fuzzing. So finally, in active reconnaissance, we will be doing port scanning. So let's say you went to tesla.com through the web browser, you are actually going to the port 80. So websites HTTP listen on port 80 and HTTPS is on port 443. So these are all open ports listening on the server. So imagine if you can find a ton of more other listening ports on the server and you can go and interact with them. This increases your attack surface massively. If I have like a file transfer protocol listening on port 21 and I can have anonymous access to it, then maybe I can download some files off the server. So the tools we'll be using is Nmap today. You can use ZenMap also. ZenMap is a graphical user interface for Nmap. If you guys don't like to use command line tools, you can use MassScan and you can write your own custom scanner. So I have one scanner that I wrote on my GitHub page. You can go and check it out. It's quite useful. At least I find it quite useful. So you can just go back into the terminal and you can type Nmap. So there are a few options that you can do with Nmap. FAF users goal. So you can set up by following the setup guide on the GitHub for FAF. Yeah, no problem. And just add go to your path and add FAF to your path, then you can use it without going to the directory. Or you can install the VM that I've included. So when you are doing Nmap, there are a few things that you can do generally. Generally, people, like if you want to scan a website, you can do like, maybe you want to do a fast scan. So you can do like --min rate 10,000 -p -p basically means all ports. Okay, so you can specify some ports to scan like -p 80 443. This means only scan for port 80 and port 443. But if you do a -p, it will scan all 65,535 ports that exist. So it will check all of them and see if it's open. Then you can type in shangn.org, and it's optional. You can output it to a file -oa and something. So you can just run this. But so what this does is it will try to scan for all ports on shangn.org with a minimum package sending rate of 10,000 package per second. So that's very fast. And I already scanned it, so you guys can take a look at it here. TCP, what did I call it? Full fast.nmap. You guys can run this command on your own, but I've already ran it. So you see, it found 3 open ports. Apart from HTTP, there are SSH and MySQL listening also. And it only took 13 seconds because we specified this min rate, 10,000. But sometimes if it's too fast, it might miss something. That sometimes the port is open, but because you send a package at such a fast rate, the firewall blocks it. So it's always something that you should only do if you are sure that the target doesn't have a firewall, or you are doing some capture the flag competitions. So now after we know this information, if I get a password from port 80, I will try it against MySQL, I will try it against SSH. So maybe there's password reused, or I can do some other malicious things on these websites. That's a full Nmap, that's a fast Nmap scan. And there's also another thing called intense Nmap scan. So you can do something like nmap -p -a shangn.org. So what does -a do? -a basically -a equals to -sc -sv -o and -trace route. -sc is basically the default script scan for Nmap. So it will run basically all the reconnaissance scripts that Nmap has built in it. And SV it will help you to identify the versions of the web server. For example, we saw just now Drupal 8, it will identify that. And -o means identify the operating system. I don't know how it does it, but it could be using the ping trick also. And -trace route, which is quite useless. It measures the number of hops that your package took to reach the destination. So if you run it, it should take a long time because -a basically means intense scan. But I've already ran it, so you can look at it again. Intense. You can see now the report is very, very messy because it got like all the other information. For example, it even did a directory fuzzing for us, and it found .git directory. You can see here. And yeah, this is my GitHub if you're interested. This is my website, y3a.github.io. And it pulled down server header, server title. And MySQL, it put out some other information like what's the host. That's not allowed to connect. This is me. I'm not allowed to connect. And yeah, you can look through all this information. Sometimes they might contain version information like this. And if you see that the version is a very old version, you might be able to find some exploits through searchsploit, which we covered just now. And yeah, this is basically the intense scan. And it normally takes a long time, as you see. It took almost 3 minutes to scan. I scanned it just now. So yep, that's all for Nmap. There's also something called mass scan that you can use, but, or is it 2S? One cool fact about mass scan is that someone actually used it to scan the entire internet before. Like every single machine out there on the internet, you can scan that. But he got a complaint from his internet service provider, so I don't think we should do that. Okay, bye Junhong. So that's basically port scanning. So we have covered both passive and active reconnaissance now. So let's do an overview. So for passive recon, you will almost never get identified as a suspicious user. And what you see is what the website wants you to see. So you might not be able to get a lot of information, but it's always good to start off passive so that you don't trigger some firewalls or something like that. And active recon, firewalls tends to identify these scans and may block your IP, but it also allows you to probe deeper than normal users. For example, if you were using the website normally and clicking on links on the website to go to directories, we will never have found the .git directory. We will also not be able to find all the open ports like SSH or MySQL. So that's why we should do active reconnaissance to gain more knowledge of our target. So that's all for active reconnaissance. Before we go into the next step, is there any questions? Okay, seems like we are running short of time. So there's also something called automated reconnaissance. So quoting one of my friends, humans are obsolete. So yeah, someone asked if will this be on YouTube? I'm not sure. So you can check with the organizers. So there are automated tools that does everything from fuzzing to exploit testing. So you have your maybe like malware auto exploit system like Cobalt Strike or like Immunity Canvas. You can go and check them out. That does like automated exploitation. But today we are interested in these three tools: Nessus, Burp Suite, and Nikto. So these are the common tools that does reconnaissance against websites. So normally Nessus is quite often used by most security professionals, and Burp Suite also, and Nikto, I don't really see it being used as much, but it's good to run it against your target. So if you want to clear the screen, you can just type clear, or you can use the shortcut Control-L. Then now to start Nessus, you'll need to do something like systemctl start Nessus D. I've already installed Nessus for you on the machine, so you can just type this and it should start. If you want to check the status, you can do systemctl status Nessus D, and it tells you that it's running. And in order to use Nessus, you have to use the web browser, http :/88 8834 I think. So you can just need to type this URL to your server, and we must do it in HTTPS. And it should bring you to this Nessus page that asks you to initialize. Because Nessus requires a certificate, a product key, so I never set it up for you, but you guys can go and set it up now. And I will just be demonstrating how to do a scan and what are the results that it might give you, because I've scanned some websites with Nessus before. What's my password? Okay, so in order to do a scan with Nessus, it's very easy. You go to the top right corner, you click new scan. Then there's a lot of things you can do with it. There's host discovery, there's network scan, there's advanced scan, there's even like malware scan, and like all this exploit scanning. So normally you can just do a basic network scan. You can see what do you want to do with it. Like for example, there's this discovery. You can see it's running a port scan on common ports. You can choose all ports. So it's basically a wrapper around like Nmap or something. I'm not sure what scanner it uses underneath, but you can even choose custom ports to scan. And you can do like host discovery, service discovery, and things like that. It's very complicated, and you can check it out. And there's also some advanced scans that you can do. So how does this look like when the scan is completed? I've scanned a site that I have access to scan. So please don't do this. Don't follow me on this, because you might not have access to this server. So it will tell you all the vulnerabilities that it has found. So you can see it found some high vulnerability SSL medium strength cipher. I honestly don't know what this means, but you can go and Google it and it might tell you something interesting. And it also shows you that, okay, so there's clear text logins permitted. So that's bad because if someone is doing a man-in-the-middle attack, he can get your passwords. There's also a lot of other information that basically the tool tells you, and you can see by vulnerability here. There's a 2% of high vulnerability. For some websites that are really poorly designed, there might be a critical vulnerability that you can just go inside, take a look, and just exploit it and get a shell. So this is what the basic scan tells you. If you use an advanced scan, there might be more things that you can know. Then we can also use nicto, as in nicto -h for host, changen.org. You can just let it run and you see it tells you what server it is and some other information. Website returns a valid response with junk HTTP methods. So that's quite bad, right? You don't have all these protections on. But due to time constraints, we won't be going through all of this. You can run these tools on your own against the test website if it's still on after this workshop. So now what are some tips? What are some good things about automated scanning that is maybe not so good about manual scanning? So automated scanning may help to pick up findings that manual scanning might have missed. So for example, if you are penetration pen testing like tesla.com, that's a very big website with like 300 subdomains, you might get tired and you might miss some things out. But automated scanning tools, they will never get tired and they will find out all these things for you. So my tip now is always run an automated scan in the background while manually fuzzing the website. So it's like an extra layer of protection. So for the manual one, it helps you gain better understanding of the whole infrastructure. So you can like maybe plan your attack plans more properly in the future. And it also picks up information that scanners tend to ignore. For example, maybe someone left their badge on the picture inside, and then they posted that on the website. Then scanners doesn't know about that, but you might be able to use that to gain access physically to the website, to the company. And manual scanning is not so easily picked up by a firewall because automated scanners, everyone can use them. So people obviously have already made firewalls to block all these scanners. So if you are doing this on a real assessment, it's always better to do it manually. Then here are some practice labs that I like to use. All of these labs are actually perfectly legal if you do hacking on them. It won't get you into any trouble. So Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, and VoundHub. You can go and check them out. And that's it. Thank you for listening throughout this workshop. You can look for me in this website if you are interested in discussing about some of these things. You can download Nessus you can just search Nessus download and yeah, it should. Let me find it for you actually. Search Nessus download and you can just go to like this Tenable site. Okay, great. So that's all for this workshop. Is there any questions? You guys can ask it now. Thanks to all of these individuals and also all of the BBCS admins for helping me with this. Thank you so much.